Chapter 35 The Plastic Brain. What's wrong? I called Arjun on FaceTime and he could see by the look on my face that something was bothering me. Do you know Dr. Kendall? I asked. Dr. Eric Kendall, the neuroscientist and Nobel Prize winner? He responded. Yes, I said. Yes. I've read all of his books. He's awesome and a true hero. A pioneer of modern brain science, he responded. I was quiet. Hello? Can you still hear me? Shoot, I said. Why are you asking about him? I explained to Arjun that I had been listening to fellow biohacker Dave Asprey's podcast, and Dr. Kendall was the interview subject. Listen to the podcast, I said. Then I hung up. The interview was about his latest book, The Disordered Mind. When Asprey asked, does this mean when someone has a structural problem in his brain that they are stuck? If you get hit in the head when you are a child and that part of the brain is not doing what it is supposed to do, is there any hope? Dr. Kendall answered, if it's a child, yes. For example, if you have damaged your left hemisphere, which is involved in speech, and if that occurs to you as an adult, you have something which is very unlikely to recover its normal function. Arjun called me back. Don't worry about it, he said. He is a hero all right, but he is not an expert on stroke recovery. That's easy for you to say, I said, wiping tears from my face. What if he's right? That I will never speak normally again. I was excited that my speech had improved by practicing every day and reading out loud. I thought my speech had also improved through playing NBAC, but I didn't tell people I was doing it because I only began 2 weeks before and wanted to feel confident that it worked before I recommended it. If I could learn to walk again, why couldn't I learn to talk normally again? I couldn't understand it. Even though I practice every day and practically see improvements every 3 months, I do understand that children have a much more moldable brain, but I had been eating incredibly healthy food and using the right supplements. I hacked my sleep. I have proper energy management, I hardly drink alcohol, and I use my own personally developed speech exercises every day. Why would it be highly unlikely that I got my speech back to normal again? We will see, I thought. It took me 2 days to get over what I had heard the doctor say on the podcast. Luckily, I was listening to an audiobook as well during that period. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. David Goggins, 2 years younger than me, is an American ultramarathon runner, ultra-distance cyclist, triathlete, motivational speaker, and author. He is a retired Navy SEAL and former Air Force Tactical Air Control Party member who served in the war in Afghanistan and the Iraq War. If you read his book, believe me, you are cured of any self-pity. I decided to convert my sadness into fuel and work even harder to recover my speech. My brain is plastic after all, even though I'm 45 right now and not a child. Until recently, it was believed that you were born with a set number of brain cells that could never be replaced and that you came into the world with a set level of intelligence that never changed. Now we know that's not true. Neuroplasticity is derived from 2 words, neuron, a nerve cell, and plastic, moldable. The terms may sound technical, but to recap, it refers to your brain's ability to adapt to the environment. It's a lifetime process of reorganizing itself by forming new neural connections. Your brain is a continual work in progress. Although the brain can produce new brain cells and supporting cells, the brain cell's capacity to take on new function when required, and the capacity of the remaining brain structure to remodel and produce a new function are at the core of why you can regain lost function. The sections below are a bit technical. If that's not your thing, just skip it and move on. The concept of neuroplasticity has been around for at least 50 years. More than 100 years ago, Ramon y Cajal discovered the capacity of nerve cells to grow, but it is only in the last 20 years that professionals have started to make full use of this potential. Pioneers such as Taub, Merzenich, and Bakirita, inventor of the Pons brainstem device for tongue stimulation, have shown that this concept can be used to great effect when you are dealing with a stroke or brain injury, regardless of the extent. See also the brilliant books about the brain's capacity to heal itself, written by Norman Doidge. Although knowledge of the brain's capacity to change is widely known, the majority of professionals working with someone after a stroke do not know enough to make full use of its power, or are bound by outdated rehab routines that just aren't cutting it when it comes to regaining lost function. See also the work of John Crocker, Broken Movement. Let's start at the beginning. The period just after a stroke is literally a crisis situation where damage needs to be contained. The resulting lack of oxygen after stroke leads to oxidative damage, and this, in turn, leads to reactive oxygen formation, which is the start of a downward cascade leading to massive damage and the death of neurons and their supporting cells. Inflammation results from a need to clear out damaged and diseased cells. This process must happen before healing and recovery can take place. At the border of the affected brain areas, supportive cells start to form a barrier to contain damage and aid in the repair process started by inflammation. Glial cells, which are part of the brain's immune system, start to produce so-called cytokines, which are immune system messengers that initiate attacks on foreign material, like a dead neuron. Researchers also found that distant neuronal pools that are normally connected to the damaged areas become affected. The brain is a collection of networks of neuronal pools, a group of neurons with the same function, that in one way or another connect to each other or have the potential to become connected. The connected neuronal pools become upregulated. They increase in function, most likely to counteract the effect of lost function in the areas affected by the stroke. This has been observed close to the damaged brain areas, as well as in more remote areas such as the brainstem, which is separately linked to much of higher cortical function. These areas literally prepare for what is about to happen. When neurons cease to exist, the axons, a branched extension coming from the neuron which can travel over many centimeters to decimeters, that come off the neuron to connect with other nerve cells, die off. This dying off of cells is called Wallerian degeneration. The secondary effect that loss of function and death of neurons have on remote areas is called diastasis. What I have not yet described is that when an area becomes dysfunctional after, for example, a stroke, the opposite happens to the same area in the other hemisphere. It becomes more active. This is probably a survival mechanism helping you recruit more functions and help from the unaffected side of your body. This is initially a good thing. After all, you have to learn to manage daily tasks again with altered functionality of your body. However, you do not want the situation to persist for too long. Increased function on one side of your brain suppresses even further the already compromised function, in this case, in the damaged areas. Specific training of the affected body parts, whether speech, leg, or arm function, will help in regaining a more healthy balance. After a stroke, big parts of the affected area are cut off from previously connected areas. This is largely dependent on the previous state and extent of the stroke. Other things that have an effect on this outcome are how well the brain was trained before the stroke, how good the nutritional status was, how many mitochondria were present in the cells, and whether there was already a low-grade inflammatory process going on. All can play a major role in the immediate outcome of a stroke. These neurons often become isolated, and even if they survive, they are no longer connected to existing networks. Therefore, albeit alive, they do not have an immediate function any longer. But there is good news as well. Bordering the walls of the so-called ventricular system, a cyst-like network inside your brain that provides vital buffering, protection, and balance for the brain's inner environment, are immature neurons that can migrate to damaged areas, which are usually more situated laterally to the ventricles. Once they arrive in the affected areas, they can mature into neurons. At present, much research is dedicated to finding out how to stimulate these migrators, as well as dormant neurons that survive the stroke, to connect up to existing networks. Of particular interest are the supportive glial cells. They not only mediate the repair process and help contain damage around the affected brain areas by cooperating with astrocytes and other supportive cells. Glial cells also have the capacity to change function and turn into neurons. This is a recent discovery that opens many new possibilities. Supportive brain cells such as microglial cells, astrocytes, and oligodendrocytes greatly outnumber neurons and are often still present in adequate numbers in the areas damaged by stroke. What happens next in the ideal progression of repair, that is, a situation where inflammation subsides gradually, is that we see so-called neuronal sprouting in the bordering areas. This means the surviving nerve cells start to grow out, stimulated by chemical factors from the damaged areas, a survival response. Much of this spontaneous growth is at random, but researchers also found that the new outgrowth from these neurons reaches and connects to functional areas. For example, in a middle cerebral artery stroke, the most common, the primary motor cortex is affected in some way. This is the area from where you give conscious commands to initiate movement. The primary motor strip is interconnected and dependent on input from the somatosensory areas situated behind it, and from input from so-called premotor areas and supplementary motor areas situated in the primary motor strip. All of these areas play key roles in the initiation and continuation of movement and are often not entirely wiped out by the stroke. The neuronal sprouting often reaches bordering areas and allows upregulation of function in these supportive areas, which often can lead to more recovery of lost function. Scientists have indicated that they frequently see increased activity and recovery of function because those areas start to take over tasks of the primary motor cortex. How does it work? When stimulated or given a command, neurons, nerve cells, make more protein. These proteins not only make the cells more stable, but they can also be used to build nerve tracts, which is the growing of sprouts out of the nerve cell. When areas in the brain are damaged by a stroke or injury, such as a blow to the head, surviving nerve cells and healthy nerve cells bordering affected areas can start to take over function when stimulated to do a new task. Nerve cells can switch function because of the DNA inside the center of each cell. Each cell in your body has the complete body blueprint, and the circumstances under which it has to operate will take on different functions. All of the processes described up to this point are also called the neurostimulation phase of neuroplasticity. Norman Doidge described this in The Brain's Way of Healing. This is the first phase of neuroplasticity. The first months after a stroke show the fastest and often most visible recovery. Much of this can be contributed to spontaneous recovery, the body's inbuilt capacity to heal itself and for the remaining neurons, supportive cells, and networks to do their work. Usually, if the damage is not too profound, much recovery, such as speech and the use of a leg or arm, takes place even without therapy. Now, this is a point worth noting. Most help is also given in the first 6 months after a stroke. It is thus not strange that recovery can take place, after which a plateau usually is reached. No offense to the physical therapists who are working for you to recover in the first 6 months, since they are helping you stand and move your arm and so on. But I think it's likely that you maybe could have recovered to a large extent without having gone to the rehab clinic. Another reason spontaneous and more rapid recovery takes place in the first months after a stroke is the recruitment of already existing networks of nerve cells with similar or slightly different functions. The brain has the possibility to make use of so-called redundant networks, which when not used often become dormant, but still have the capacity of similar function to the damaged networks. These networks can, although often in a less controlled way, take over some lost function when stimulated precisely enough. A third reason change is more visible in the first months is that the chaos, depression, and brain inflammation caused by the stroke gradually settle down. The above process of quieting down the chaos of signals after a stroke is part of the second phase of neuroplasticity. This is also called the neuromodulation phase. The second thing that happens, besides quieting down the chaos, is the downregulation of the sympathetic nervous system. After a stroke, the fight or flight part of your nervous system goes into overdrive to defend your body. It helps with the inflammation that is needed to clear out the debris. It basically puts your body in survival mode. This is necessary in the initial first weeks, but harms the repair process when it persists too long. You do not want your mitochondria to shut off into cell danger response, or compromise circulation plus stress hormones going on in the system for too long. We have to note that this is the ideal situation. The reality is that this often does not happen because of pre-existing problems in the brain, such as an overly active limbic system, or poor brain health or nutritional status. The gradual settling down of chaotic and unguided firing within the nervous system after a stroke comes about when repair and recovery have first taken place and when the appropriate timing and spacing of nerve signaling to vital areas and reticular activation system in the brainstem takes over again. They are scattered groups of neurons that play a major role in postural stability and muscle tone control. They also help the integration of brain networks and play a major role in the activation of higher brain centers. Proper function of these reticular areas ensures alignment and coordination of the different networks so that they fire appropriately and in synchrony. Luckily, in most of us that have had a stroke, these areas are still intact and can be used for recovery. The third phase in neuroplasticity is a so-called neural relaxation phase, where your nervous system literally has to recover from all the extra effort you have consciously and unconsciously put into repairing and redirecting function. This is a tiredness, fatigue, and lack of energy and drive that you probably have noticed, especially in the first months after your stroke. The tiredness does not come from weak mitochondrial function. It often appears on top of that. Sleep, downtime, and recharging rituals are of the utmost importance when you are experiencing these symptoms. The fourth and last phase of neuroplasticity is also called neural differentiation. When everything has settled down after the initial repair phase, spontaneous recovery, and the calming down of chaos within the central nervous system. It is the phase where the smoke clears and you can assess the damage. This is where the real repair starts to take place. The reality for you can be that this differentiation phase only starts when you are already many months into your rehabilitation. It is in this phase that nerve cells and networks can change into and adapt to new functions. What you have to understand is that although neuroplasticity is a game changer for recovery after a stroke, or any damage to the brain, it is often a random event. If neuroplasticity does not take place in a directed and purposeful way, it will most likely not contribute much to further recovery. This implies that you have to educate the areas where the brain has to change into a new function. As I mentioned earlier, new research also shows that more neurons, nerve cells, survive than previously thought, but they become quiet because they are either in a state of shock, which causes the genetic material to switch into survival, quiet mode, or simply not connected to a network anymore. Early repair and recovery from the initial shock situation, also called depression of cellular function, make function come back in some of these surviving nerve cells. Many researchers are currently looking into ways to reactivate and recruit these quiet, dormant neurons. Another discovery is perhaps even more exciting. Scientists recently found that supportive cells such as glial cells, which normally facilitate neurons and are part of the brain's immune system, can change into healthy neurons. Because these supporting cells are more numerous than brain cells, this potentially gives new possibilities as well. There is a catch though, with the brain's capacity to heal itself. To regain function, the brain parts that need to repair or reorganize have to be stimulated very precisely and with the right intensity. Specificity is the key. What this means for you is that you will have to use what is not functioning, even if that seems impossible. Plus, it will take a lot of work, not just months, but possibly years. A very good example of how brain plasticity works is described in the chapter on constraint-induced movement therapy. How do I personally encourage my brain plasticity? I assembled a toolbox from what I read and immediately put the theory into practice, in the form of habits. First of all, I create the perfect basis for the brain and the nervous system to participate in optimal neuroplasticity in the form of, first, the best sleep. Proper nighttime routines, perfect room temperature, no light, reduced blue light exposure. See the chapter on sleep. Second, optimal brain nutrition. Think krill oil, alpha-lipoic acid, N-acetylcysteine, curcumin, and blueberry extract, among others. See the Blue Zone chapter. Third, increased energy levels by optimizing mitochondrial function. For example, increase mild, short-lived, but intense exposure to stressors such as cold, heat, muscle strain, nutraceutical toxins, etc. See chapters The Biohacker Mom and What Doesn't Kill Us Makes Us Stronger. Fourth, reduced neuroinflammation, one of the most overlooked problems after stroke and traumatic brain injury. And fifth, stress reduction. Through optimal breathing, meditation, music, having a good time, and surrounding myself with supportive friends and family. See stress and unstressed chapters. Then, after creating the right basis for neuroplasticity, I specifically focus on retraining purposeful and correct stabilization before undertaking any more sophisticated movement retraining, like core, shoulder, and hip stabilization. Practice to perfection alongside or before any attempt is made to intensively retrain hand and/or leg-foot movement. I don't pretend to be an expert on neuroplasticity, but I have designed my life as a biohacker and will continue to try everything to stimulate neuroplasticity. In fact, you can call me a neuroplasticity guinea pig. Dr. Eric Kandel used the words unlikely to recover speech to its normal function, but he didn't say impossible. I am going to do everything in my power to make it possible. Chapter 36. Swimming Rats. Have you heard about the experiments by Professor Kurt Richter in 1957 that involved swimming rats? As a Harvard graduate and Johns Hopkins scientist, he did a series of experiments that tested how long rats could swim in a bucket of water before drowning. Dr. Richter discovered that, under normal circumstances, a rat could swim for an average of about 15 minutes before quitting, giving up, and sinking. However, if he rescued the rats just before they sank and drowned, dried them off, let them take a brief break, and then put the rats back in the same bucket of water, they could swim an average of 60 hours a day before drowning. 60 hours! If a rat was pro tempore saved, it would survive 240 times longer than if it was not saved just in time. Dr. Richter concluded that the rats were able to swim longer because they were given hope. Maybe a worthier conclusion is that the rats were able to swim longer because they were able to extend their energy from the hope Dr. Richter provided. You are also capable of much more than you previously thought, that is, if you are given hope. However, do you have the energy to swim for as long as it takes? If you doubt it, maybe I can help. Previously, I talked about energy as it relates to biohacking and hormesis. I think hormesis is one of the most important things to do regularly to get more energy. But now I will discuss other things that improve your energy level. If you want to recover from a stroke, you need to optimize your energy so you have the strength and stamina to recover. An increased energy level is especially important to give neuroplasticity a chance to recover any lost function. Your brain uses much of your energy. After a stroke, it requires even more because it has to put in more effort for the same tasks. It is not as efficient as it once was. Recovery through neuroplasticity also takes more energy. The tiredness and fatigue you experience comes from having to compensate all the time and the below par performance of your mitochondria. Improving energy levels will involve improving brain function in a structured way, reorganizing brain function as effectively as possible, and addressing the many issues that influence your cellular energy production. If you follow the advice laid out from previous chapters about sleep and hormesis, you will have more energy. Some additional information follows. Once again, skip the section below if you find it too technical or complicated. All of the following have a significant impact on energy production. First, oxygen, circulation, and breathing. Second, glucose levels. Third, exercise. Fourth, circadian rhythm, daily biorhythms dictated by the sun. Fifth, sleep habits. Sixth, water. Seventh, stress management. Eighth, hormesis, exposing your body to stressors over a short and repetitive period to build energy. And ninth, toxins. Mitochondria appear to play a substantial role not only in energy production, but also in immunity and inflammation. Your mitochondria are either in a metabolic energy production mode or cell defense mode, also called cell danger response. This on and off switching is the key to experiencing fatigue or not. Simply put, if you can keep your mitochondria in energy production mode, then you have energy. Anything that pushes the mitochondria into cell danger response makes you feel more tired, unless you have plenty of mitochondria you can use for energy production. Fatigue is a situation where energy production in your mitochondria is shut off because they have gone into defense mode. For example, when you suddenly need to sleep a lot more. This can be a direct indication of a cell danger response in your mitochondria. Whenever mitochondria sense that viruses, bacteria, or toxins are trying to damage or feed off energy production, they go into survival mode. That results in low energy. The following can all cause fatigue because your mitochondria have gone into survival mode. First, lack of sleep. Second, medication use. Third, excessive body weight. Fourth, high blood sugar levels. Fifth, inflammation. Sixth, lack of exercise. Seventh, psychological stresses and adverse childhood events. Eighth, nutrient deficiencies. 9th, lack of hormesis. 10th, poor immune function. And 11th, toxins and leaky gut. Most of us have at least 5 or 6 of these factors present at any given time. Taking the most expensive supplements or having the best diet alone will not help enough to improve energy levels when that is the case. To be more precise, what are the most important triggers for your mitochondria to go into self-defense mode? First, remove all processed food from your diet. Processed foods contain bisphenols, phthalates, plastic additives, and artificial colorings, and they promote insulin resistance. Start eating whole foods again and try to eat only what your ancestors would have eaten 100 years ago. You should be able to identify what you eat, and if you can't pronounce the name of a food substance, you probably shouldn't consume it. Basically, if your great-grandmother would not be able to identify a food in the grocery store, a food contains ingredients you cannot pronounce, or it has a long shelf life, do not buy it. Second, eat as much organic food as possible. This helps you avoid chemicals like pesticides and herbicides that build up in our food. Third, cut down or eliminate alcohol. Alcohol is a well-known mitochondrial toxin. Fourth, install good quality water filters. Pure water is hard to get these days. Our drinking water still contains many chemicals and traces of harmful substances like medication, fluoride, and chlorine byproducts. Fifth, ventilate and purify the air in your house, especially when you are living in industrial areas or a city. Whenever you smell gases or fumes, make sure you do this. It is a known fact that the air inside our house is often more polluted and dangerous for us than being outside. 6. Get rid of kitchen equipment that is full of chemicals, like Teflon-coated pans. Can be highly toxic, especially when your pan is getting older, and cheaply produced ceramic-coated pans, which often contain heavy metals, etc. 7. Replace non-natural health and beauty products with organically based products. Our shower products, facial creams, perfumes and colognes, and other types of makeup are often riddled with all sorts of unhealthy substances. Hormone-disrupting chemicals that affect estrogen and testosterone levels, heavy metals, and other mitochondrial toxins are common in these products. And 8. Replace cleaning products with naturally based cleaning products. When mitochondria go into cell defense mode, it's as if they are squeezed like a sponge. Many of the vital minerals and necessary nutrients are washed out. These include magnesium, vitamin Bs, ubiquinol, CoQ10, potassium, ATP, and ADP, to name a few. All of these play a major role in the energy-producing cycles within mitochondria. Losing these components is exactly how energy production is halted. It is also important to note that damage to mitochondria is directly associated with aging. The more accumulated damage, the faster you age. That's something we don't want to happen, right? So, what can you do to improve energy production and repair and lower oxidative stress, besides removing all of the factors that make mitochondria go into defense mode? There are several ways to boost mitochondrial function. For example, eating foods that are good for your mitochondria, when you can tolerate them, and using compounds that build energy stores. Foods that boost mitochondrial function include dark leafy vegetables, shellfish, fish eggs, liver, egg yolks, avocados, and seaweed. Damaged mitochondria can be repaired, and there are specific foods and food components that can be used to do that. There is one element of the utmost importance for this, in particular, and that is phospholipids. In some studies, additional supplementation with phospholipids was responsible for a 40% reduction of fatigue in persons that were suffering from chronic fatigue. what foods contain phospholipids? Raw eggs, fish eggs, krill, shellfish, and fresh, uncooked vegetables. You need to be aware that when cooking these foods, the phospholipid content declines very rapidly. In addition to increasing these essential phospholipids in your diet, taking high phospholipid krill oil is probably the easiest way. There are some other known boosters of mitochondrial repair and protection, such as phosphatidylserine and astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a potent natural component found in some algae eaten by life forms like shrimp. Astaxanthin powerfully protects the mitochondrial membrane against oxidative stress, and even increases oxygen uptake without causing the side effects of producing more reactive oxygen. Some krill supplements have both high contents of phospholipids and astaxanthin. Why should we discuss toxins in the first place? Our governments and health agencies make sure we're protected from those, don't they? Well, yes, up to a certain point. They make sure that you are not exposed to immediately dangerous levels of toxins in your everyday life. That is where it ends though. There are many toxins in our environment that manufacturers and experts know are potentially dangerous for us. Because low levels do not pose a direct threat, they are allowed. Pollutants are everywhere, in your food, your house, the air you breathe, the soil, the clothes you wear, and in your daily care and cleaning products. I will outline the most important sources of toxins, detail how you can avoid them and lower the toxic load on your body, and explain how to detox and get rid of those toxins. Almost all toxins will have a negative influence on energy production and your health. Toxins will promote inflammation in your body, dysregulate your immune system, and certainly have a negative impact on your energy production. Many of them dysregulate the nervous system and, even worse, can cause cancer and a range of other diseases. Remember that when mitochondria perceive stress, they stop producing energy and instead start to operate in cell defense mode, immediate cell danger response. How much toxic material do we have in our bodies? According to researchers, quite a lot. Of course, this depends on your work, the country you live in, and whether you live in the mountains or the city. But the fact is, there are many studies of people who are not exposed to toxins in their work, yet still have between 71 to 176 known toxins in their bodies. That is staggering. This toxic load affects the way you feel and how much energy you have. The most common toxins are heavy metals. For example, from car exhaust or gasoline fumes, lead, thallium, 10 times more toxic than mercury, and benzene. Mercury and aluminum are pervasive toxins. Mercury is present in a lot of products and have a white appearance, and aluminum is in most antiperspirants and deodorants. In our vegetables and most processed foods, there are traces of insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, and if you are unlucky, you are even exposed to them when you live in the country or when your house or furniture have been treated for fungus like black mold. Exposure to fungus such as black mold produces aflatoxin, which can be found in trace amounts in our food. Other common fungal toxins may be found in coffee. You can now purchase coffee on the internet that is certified as mold-free. So, what can you do about this? Can you leave things as they are? That's not a good idea, especially since our bodies are not made for the number of toxins we are exposed to nowadays. The toxic load we are expected to deal with is ever increasing because our primary detoxifying systems, the liver and the skin, cannot keep up with the number of toxins we are exposed to. Most of them are stored. Most toxins are fat-soluble and easily stored in our fatty tissues and organs. It may be necessary to add detox-boosting and liver-supporting foods to your daily diet. In the end, Having a lifestyle that includes the healthy consumption of clean food and avoiding toxins altogether is by far the best way to deal with these issues every day. With this in mind, you also have to make sure that your gut is healthy and that you're not dealing with the consequences of leaky gut as well. That would require an immediate solution, since toxicity in your body and leaky gut are a terrible combination. Now on to the good news. There are a lot of things you can do to reduce or even annihilate the effects of toxins. First, make sure you eat a lot of vegetables. This is a no-brainer. Vegetables not only contain a lot of micronutrients and chemicals that aid detoxification, they also contain fibers that can bind toxins, making them easier to be removed by excretion. In addition, they provide the essential non-soluble fibers that build the diversity of our microbiome, which protects us from a host of diseases and plays an all-important role in the well-being of the rest of your body and brain. Here are the other essential foods to help you detoxify. First, all kinds of greens and green juices. The chlorophyll that makes up the vegetables and grasses in green juice is an excellent detoxifier. Second, berries and cruciferous vegetables, like broccoli and cauliflower. Third, vitamin C-rich foods, like lemons and limes. They also help boost glutathione levels. This is the most important antioxidant in your liver and body. Fourth, beets and Brussels sprouts, which prepared in the right way taste phenomenal. Really. Fifth, herbs that are useful include dandelion, milk thistle, artichoke, and turmeric, curcumin. 6. Liver from organically and grass-fed raised cattle or organic chicken provides a lot of nutrients that support the liver. And 7th, along with the food you eat, you can add supplements to boost and support liver function as well as detoxification. Milk thistle, especially the silymarin found in milk thistle, is one of the few products out there that can both repair damaged liver cells and protect the liver as well as support the detoxification pathways. It took me approximately 2 years to feel this energetic, even though I'm now 3 years post-stroke. Of course, I'm tired at night, but remember, I also get up at 5 in the morning and I'm working hard on my rehab. You can improve your energy level too by creating the right energy habits. Of course, there are many diversities between humans and rats, but one resemblance emerges. We all need a boost of energy and hope to keep on swimming. My sincere ambition is to help give you some of that hope and insight throughout this book.